More than 200 years ago, Americans fought a revolution. A revolution against big government.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and has sent hither swarms of officials to harass our people and eat out their substance.
George III and his bureaucrats taxed and controlled their lives until the people said, enough. The government in Washington, D.C. makes you nostalgic for old King George. The royal tax collectors took about 25% from our ancestors. This year, government at all levels will extract 5% of our money to waste. And not gently. IRS agents use wiretaps, mail openings, informants, disguises, guns, chains, and jails to get every last dime. Meanwhile, at the Federal Reserve, 12 faceless bureaucrats decide your economic future. In secret. How much inflation should there be next year? What should interest rates be? How much of your savings should be transferred to politicians and their favored big banks? The Supreme Court, where individual rights are supposed to be protected, think it's fine if government invades our financial privacy, spies on us in our bedrooms, regulates church schools, and restricts our free speech. Meanwhile, at the Congress, everything is up for grabs, as long as it's yours.
I'm Pamela Wistrom, co-host of On Second Thought. And now, for the host and star of this 14-year weekly-long TV show. Oh, are you ready? The one and only William J. Wagner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pamela. Tonight, people, we have a show. We have the California 18, or most of them, here on the set. Unfortunately, a few of them were not able to be here tonight, but we have a large crowd here. Among the California 18 here, we hope you will get to know how to defend yourself against what I call the merciless bank gangsters. I'm not an expert, but we've got some people who are close as anything you're ever going to meet to an expert, each in their own specific field. So please pay close attention. With me as our first guest here on the studio is Jack Sooty. Thanks for being with us, Jack. Tell us what you want to tell us what we need to know.
Okay. Thank you, Willem, for having all of the most of us, the California 18. What a pleasure to have us here as a group. I'm looking at you all for the first time together, and I'll tell you, it's an impressive thing. We are fed up with our judiciary and our prosecutors. We are here gathered because our hearts are pouring out to you, the listeners, to believe that there is corruptness out there going on with our titles, with our properties. They're being stolen, and we need to have your help with us getting the ear of the Attorney General to produce some prosecutions. We know for a fact that people are out there still to this day, after the settlements, after the agreements with the banks, that are still committing fraud. These are not misdemeanors. These are not petty offenses or infractions. These are felonious accounts that people are still doing, and nobody is getting prosecuted. We need to stop this. Our prosecuting agencies have a responsibility, and they've taken an oath to enforce it, and we're sick and tired of the fact they're not doing anything. I myself am a victim. I need to have some justice. I can't get it. For 4 years, I've been fighting my bank, and nothing's been done to prosecute the 4 felonies. Nothing. I've asked 3 agencies, San Diego County DA, Ventura County DA, and now the Attorney General. They don't return my calls, write me back. They ignore me. That's not justice.
Wow. Jack, tell me, is there a website you would recommend people to look at?
Well, I think you have to be careful when you're on the internet And anywhere you go, we're probably going to be feeding you some information here down the road that will tend to give you some direction as to where you can go. Each of us has our own way here tonight, and some of us will be giving you some websites or ideas of where to go. I know an old site that we used to be on, and we started a long time ago, was called Homeowners for Justice. C.J. Holmes started that. She was the founder of the California 18, and why we are here. We have 18 spreadsheets that we put together, and it's a large document that we had blown up. I have an assignment of my deed of trust, which is one of the 3 or 4 documents that everybody has on their land record, usually, predominantly, and it's the first step that the bank uses to falsify records. They record this on your property. They don't have the legal right most of the time to even do it. It's not their loan. They hide behind the crowd of judges who support them because they won't send them to jail.
Is that the document there?
This is an assignment of deed of trust, and what this is the first document of many, including some promissory notes that are being forged, and the signature that you see scribbled there, that is supposed to be the legal signature on a legal document, and it's not. You'll see it's a scribbling, and the gentleman's name that's there, Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, has no knowledge of who he is, and yet he signed it as a representative of theirs.
Wow, is that a robo-signature?
It most certainly is, and it's still going on to this day.
Jack, tell us your credentials.
I'm a former police officer from Illinois and San Diego. Been a licensed detective, licensed in California, and part of the time I was licensed in Nevada as a private investigator. I'm a forensic specialist dealing with mortgage fraud and the representation of title fraud, and I work with many other people, including my peers here tonight. I've got about 6,000 investigations under my belt, and I've saved 20 people.
That's certainly worthy of an applause. That's certainly worthy of an applause. Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate you being here. Now we're going to turn to my next guest, Renee. Renee's on my side. Thank you, Renee, for being here.
Thank you, William. Thank you very much.
Tell us what you think people should know, Renee.
Well, what I think you should know is that if you're paying a mortgage or you think you're paying a mortgage, you might want to look into who you're actually paying. We can tell you unequivocally that we have none of us seen a legal document for anyone with a right to take your home or to collect money from you. We approached a year ago C.J. Holmes, our founder. We've got to give her a round. C.J.'s the reason we're here. C.J. Holmes amazingly brought together a show. We did a daily show for an hour in education. Through this show, we found that oaths and bonds were being violated. We found that we all came together with all our illegal documents with Recon Trust and Bank of America. And so what happened was, those were the two starting. Now I can tell you, everyone here, we represent every fraudster in the nation and the world. This doesn't just mean the United States, it goes international. We have every bank involved, not just, we have Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Deutsche Bank, we have Chase, JP Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Diamond, because you're still in homes and you're still in your chair. We're out to get you. You're going to leave that chair unless you can get into a chair we really would like to see you in. We've got every servicer, Ocwen, Litton, Aurora. We have Recon Trust. We have Quality Loan Servicing, two of which in California are not paying any property or business taxes. We cannot find them paying business taxes any county in California.
Who is this, Renee?
Recon Trust, who is part of why we, the 18, are together.
And they're registered in California
And
to
they're
do
not
business.
paying any business taxes.
And they pay no taxes?
Zero. Oh, but Quality Loan Servicing does in Washington.
What?
Wow.
Yes. Now, we contacted Kamala Harris. C.J. Holmes sent 18 cases, and it was sent directly. We were told we were going to get some action. A year later, here we sit. What happened 2 months ago was we decided we'd had enough. Jed, down on the end here, Mr. Davis, and I, unknowingly at the same time, started reaching out to the AG. Now, mind you, for the last year, with this group alone, there are probably thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of emails to every agency. which, by the way, when you're a public representative, you have a duty under your oath to investigate fully, not just look at a piece of paper and say, oh, that doesn't look right. I mean fully, F-U-L-L-Y. And we have an F-bomb in our fraud closure world. It's called fraud. It is the biggest F-bomb this nation knows. This F-bomb has created identity theft, trespass on our likeness, which is creating the crime scenes within our records, in our land records, that is stealing our homes, our land, and our lives. Our families, in this group, I can tell you, no longer know who we are. When this plight started in our lives, we were gone. I have had one day in the last 6 months that I can even tell you I've shared with a child of mine, smiled, and tried to leave this plight behind. I myself found the tax assessor's office having stolen 1.63 acres from my property. When I went in to remind them I had the documents showing for the second time, I won my home back from illegal foreclosure. They were shocked that I found it. I was more shocked that they took it. In investigation and in proof, we found out that it was a perfect, what appeared to be an easement for utility down my property, with a big development going in a plot away. I kicked into gear because 2 weeks later I got a notice of default on my property. I am being stalked, I believe, and harassed systematically through every agency now that we can get it. We can all tell you, when you're in foreclosure, you have utility problems. You have mail problems because the post office is involved. You have problems with your access. I actually have a title policy that was paid. Equity Title sold me a policy for as an underwriter, Commonwealth Title. My land is landlocked. I have no legal easement in or out of my property. I have 27 acres I don't have a legal right to get to or from. But they gave me a title policy. And each and every modification that they did that was illegal on my property, and I mean illegal because they wouldn't listen to me, they didn't put the names properly on it, so therefore it's void, V-O-I-D, fraud is void. There is no question. This is we shouldn't have to go to court to prove. It's void. So what happens with all of this is we send 18 cases to the Attorney General. Kamala Harris, darling, I am ready to have a cup of coffee with you and bring my crew. California 18 is calling you to the carpet. You have an oath which I have received without a notary on it. I have questioned why there's no notary on your oath. William, if there's no notary, do you think that means she's swearing under testimony that it's true?
If there's no notary, it's not a valid oath.
Well, that's my thought. So Kamala, let's clear this up, because we've talked to David Payman in LA, we've talked to Leslie Westmoreland, both very wonderful gentlemen, and I can tell you, I firmly believe that these two men had good mothers, because I think they raised good men. And I think these two men really are telling us the truth when they tell us they want to jail these banksters.
Well, that's been my solution for a long time, and people think maybe I'm a little radical, but I've been saying for a long time, the solution is to arrest all the banksters, starting with the Federal Reserve Board of Directors and all their subchapters and all their 7, 8, 9 branches of the Federal Reserve. You arrest them on the same day across the nation at the same time, and you lock them up until the gold that used to fill up Fort Knox is brought back, because it was stolen on 9/11, and there's virtually no corporate media coverage of what happened to all the gold that was at the gold depository. And where did it go? The bank gangsters got it, and they've stored it somewhere in a private vault, probably in upstate New York, and they're not going to give it back until they've crushed us completely, made us homeless on the land our founding fathers stole from the Indians. And I said that right. We stole it from the Indians.
Yes, amen.
And we need to put those bank gangsters in jail without bond, no getting out. The gold comes back from wherever you took it, because there was billions of gold bricks at the gold depository. They have never found but $280 million worth of it. Mm-hmm. 280 million. There was a little tiny one-paragraph story in the New York Times, and nobody else touched that story again. Where did the billions go? All of this is connected, and I think there's an agenda going on. I think the solution starts with, first of all, we have people from many counties here, some from Norm Verroman's county, which Mendocino County, yeah, all the way down here, a 10-hour drive. You'll hear him yet. Stay tuned. Norm Verroman was the good DA of Mendocino County who riled the federals, got them really upset, and we're not going to go into that issue. But my point is, from every county, if you form your own militia, I mean armed men and women who are not only armed, but trained and ready to march to enforce the second thing that needs to be done. You need we the people, like that's behind me on this banner, we the people, grand juries, not appointed by any crooked judge in the county. And I have this on the authority of Justice Scalia of the U.S. Supreme Court. It says the grand juries do not belong to the judiciary, they don't belong to the executive, and they don't belong to the legislative. This is we the people's time when we see things are so bad, gone so far south. We the people spontaneously form our own grand juries. We impanel, we take an oath, we choose a foreman, we choose a secretary and a recording officer. Then we call in the witnesses, and the witnesses come and testify under oath. It's all kept just like you do on these bogus grand juries that they use now. And then they issue what's called a true bill of indictment for the judge, for the congressman who took kickbacks and mutter into the table. I mean, Cunningham's in prison down from San Diego, and he was supposedly the golden boy who was going to save everything. He's doing time right now. I can tell you for a certain fact, more than half of all of the 435 congressmen have taken kickbacks. And you never see a congressman go into Congress worth only $200,000 net worth and come out only $200,000 net worth. Every one of those guys comes out worth multi-millions. Where do they get the multi-millions from?
Well, I can...
This is my solution. If you don't believe me, read this book by, I hate to publish because it's not about the book tonight. Read this book called LBJ, The Mastermind of the JFK Assassination. Whether you believe Oswald did it or not, read the book. You're going to find out Oswald couldn't have possibly have done it. He was set up by Johnny Rosselli and some guys connected to the mafia, taking orders through several levels of deniability, and that's key. They always have levels of deniability, so you can't connect LBJ directly to any of these characters. But when you form We the People grand juries and they issue a true bill of indictment, and that true bill of indictment, you have someone deliver it to the sheriff with witnesses. And it'd be good if you had a dozen witnesses, and it'd be good if they were armed. That's a flashback to last September of 2014. Today's Friday, and we're here in the studio live again. What you were seeing is what you're not going to see on CBS. People explaining how the bank gangsters have defrauded you and I and our neighbors and the guy who lives in the back of the block and the guy down the street. Defrauded them, absolutely defrauded them with their bank loans. Nobody from the bank is going to come knocking on your door and say, hello, Mr. Smith or Miss Jones. We have scrambled your loan. We have shredded your original note that you signed, which was the promise to pay. We've shredded that after we digitalized it, and then we sold the digital copies 2, 3, 4, 5 times within the first 6 months of you signing the loan on your house. And this is usually true if you're buying a house new or if you're just remortgaging your house. They've defrauded you. They've already collected the full payment that you're going to make over the next umpty 9 years. They've already got it in the first 6 months, sometimes in the first 3 months. According to Valerie Lopez, who was here live in the studio not too many months ago, 97% of the loans, even if you're not in foreclosure, 97% have been devalued by the loan mortgage companies, or MERS, which stands for Mortgage Electronic Registry Systems, have defrauded you. Some of these companies weren't even in business or were out of business when the loans theoretically were assigned to them, called an assignment of trustee. And almost never do they record the original note that you signed at the county courthouse. Almost never. Why is that? Why is that? Because they don't want you to be able to track their felonies. And they're engaged in multiple felonies. As Valerie Lopez said so eloquently, they would not go through the California door. They took the shortcut to Wall Street, to the bank gangsters. You know, those guys too big to fail. They all got paid off. They all got new $50 million jets and bonuses. And you, the people, we the people, we got the royal screwing. I'm sorry if you missed that. And if you don't believe me, listen to Candace Jones. She was part of that California 18. And then I'm going to take you to a man who I think should be nominated as World Hero of the Year. His first name is Ed. But first, Candace Jones, who used to be a supervisor at B of A, Bank of America, one of the big ones. And she'll tell you all these loans are fraud, and you can't modify fraud. Tell it, Candace.
I'm not proud to say that today. Can you hear me? I'm not proud to say that today. I was for years, up until the 90s, since I started in the 70s. And I personally have read the National Mortgage Settlement. I've read the TARP program. I read the DOJ. And one thing I could tell immediately when I read this, and Kamala Harris, I can tell that you didn't write this. I can tell that you probably had a few words in it, but the rest of it was written by the banks. One thing you can always be sure of with a bank is that they will promise you the moon, and in the end, they'll take it back. They have wonderful little words they love to slip in. And if anyone ever read the TARP, you could know that it was only suggested that they do modification for these people. Now, first off, I don't believe in these modifications because it's modified fraud, just as Renee said. These documents are fraudulent in everything I've seen. Over the last 3 years, I've probably worked with about 100 different people, friends that have come to me. Because after I retired, they knew how long I'd been in the business. They knew also that I was an expert with the FDIC, and also I was with the Resolution Trust that took down the savings and loans. So, Camilla, I have to tell you right up front, honey, I think you sold us out. I think you sold out California. And your citizens deserve much better than that. You're not the only attorney general that did it. All the rest of them did it with the exception of Snyderman. And we can be thankful at least one person or a couple there held out. But I truly am ashamed to say you're our attorney general. One thing I want to tell you is that you started the moderator for the attorney general. You were quite proud of that came out of the National Mortgage Settlement. Well, let me tell you how that's working out for the people. Because, like I said, I've helped a few people, and I have spoken with your moderators, and they are truly just spokesmen for the banks, okay? They don't know what they're doing. Most of the people at the banks don't know what they're doing. I deal with corporate, and I know when they're lying to me. And I want to tell you just a couple of real quick stories. One of them is a widow, okay, with 2 children that are special needs children. She has a sister that is in the 4th stage of cancer. We worked with Wells Fargo on a loan modification because she didn't have the courage or the stamina for a lawsuit. So we worked for 3 years with Wells Fargo. After 3 years, 1,060 documents faxed to the bank, 147 phone calls to the bank. In the end, they said that it's not in the investor's best interest to modify this loan. Okay, now she's in a lawsuit. We're backing her up every way we can. I've documented these calls. In the meantime, before they denied her, I was working with your moderator. And let me tell you what the moderator said. There's not really anything we can do to help you. And I asked one of your people at the moderator, I said, here's what I want. I want a copy of the pooling and servicing agreement. If this woman's in a supposed trust, which there again, the bank doesn't know who her investor is, because I've received 2 letters from Wells Fargo. One letter states it's U.S. Bank. The other letter states that it was Goldman Sachs. They don't know because it's not with an investor. Okay, these trusts closed. They're no longer trading on SEC. They already have closed these trusts. Investors have taken the tax write-off from the IRS. These things have been bought back. Okay, and whenever you call the bank, the first thing they say to you, we are a debt collector. These are people that have bought up bad credit card debt, unsecured debt. that are now pretending to be a lender,
That's
saying
exactly.
Say that
That is exactly.
well, they
Say
are.
that one again.
They are pretending to be your lender when they are, in fact, a debt collector. I always had the phrase that I called debt collectors the little mafia because they just come at you with both guns. And they don't have anything to come after. It's an unsecured debt that they're coming after you, and they're modifying. When, in fact, they do, after a couple of years, modify these loans, they put in the document, you cannot come back at us and sue us for anything wrongdoing in the past. Okay, first off, that's illegal too, to take away your legal rights to sue them. But it's in every loan modification packet. And just to show you an example, here's a banker box full of this one woman's file that is now in a lawsuit with the bank. So these are the 1,060 documents that I personally, being a banker, faxed in that they claim they never got. I have another gentleman, Bank of America, all of them are in it. Bank of America simply said after 10 submissions by this gentleman, now keep in mind the bank does get back $1,500 from your settlement, Camilla, every time they offer to help the people. So why do they want you to submit 10 times? That's $1,500 a pop. After the 10th time and working with your moderator again, explaining to him that Bank of America came back and said, you are declined for this modification because we do not have contractual authority from the investor. There again, they don't know who the investor is. So I thought, okay, if you say this is Wells Fargo's the investor, I'll write Wells Fargo. I did write them. Wells Fargo came back and said it's against our contractual authority to tell them if they can modify or not. We don't care. I took these two letters and sent them to your moderator, who came back and told the homeowner, I'm sorry, we really just can't help you, and I cannot get you the PSA to prove it because the trust is not even trading anymore. But, you know, you can do a deed in lieu of, or you can do a short sale. And I explained to him that he'd been there for 30 years, and yes, he will get something done on his home if I have to keep him there another 30 years. So after that, they were so upset with me at B of A, and they do like to hang up on me. They don't like, I think they've got my number down. But they sold him off. And another thing they did to you, Camilla, in your national mortgage settlement, you put all these restrictions, okay, even though with their little loopholes in there. But what did they do? B of A sold them all off to NationStar. Wells Fargo sold theirs off. Now they're with SLS, SPS, all these other little debt collectors. So they got out from under your settlement totally. They gave you money to help the people. You set up a group of bureaucracy to out here to help the people. And what do they tell me? I'm sorry, we can't help the people. So, yeah, I am very disappointed in what's going on. The documents, like they were talking about with Marina, I looked at all 500 of the documents that she used in that audit, and all 500 were fraudulent. Out of the 100 people that have come to me, I've looked at their documents. All of them should be suing the banks. All of them should come back and sue you for not doing what you should have done with your job.
And we will. Amen. We will.
Okay, thank you, Candace. Thank you very much. Candace Jones, who's still getting her, as far as we know, she's still getting her B of A retirement check. However, she had to leave Santa Barbara, and I think she had to flee to another state just to avoid lots of useless hassles. And I keep wondering, Marina Reed has shown you huge stacks of documents. Why have you not taken action, Joyce Dudley, the elected second woman of the district attorney's office ever to be elected? Why haven't you indicted any of these bank criminals? Is it because too many of the judges in Santa Barbara own stock in B of A and U.S. Bank and these other big banks, and you're afraid they won't let you prosecute them? Maybe we need a clean sweep of all these judges that own stock in banks. Maybe we need a clean sweep of the district attorney's office. I think there's still some lingering stench from the days of Snake Steadon. But that's just, my feeling. What I want you to hear today is my number one nominee for Hero of the World is no politician, He's nobody in any great power, but he used to work for the government. And according to him, the government is tracking everything everywhere. Let's go to a documentary. You can find it. It's called Citizen 4. It's on YouTube as Citizen 4, or just search the internet. I don't think it's on YouTube, but it's Citizen 4 and you will find this. But if you don't do the internet, watch this. It's running.
Laura, at this stage I can offer nothing more than my word. I am a senior government employee in the intelligence community. I hope you understand that contacting you is extremely high risk, and you are willing to agree to the following precautions before I share more. This will not be a waste of your time. The following sounds complex, but should only take minutes to complete for someone technical. I would like to confirm out of email that the keys we exchanged were not intercepted and replaced by your surveillance. Please confirm that no one has ever had a copy of your private key and that it uses a strong passphrase. Assume your adversary is capable of 1 trillion guesses per second. If the device you store the private key and enter your passphrase on has been hacked, it is trivial to decrypt our communications. Understand that the above steps are not bulletproof and are intended only to give us breathing room. In the end, if you publish the source material, I will likely be immediately implicated. This must not deter you from releasing the information I will provide. Thank you, and be careful. Citizen 4.
That's right, and this is all about creating an independent record. To me, this goes to the question of independently verifying what the government is doing. That's why I keep going back to that question.
More with David Sirota after CBS News Traffic and Weather on KKZF Thornton, Denver, Boulder, AM 7.
Hey, can you hear me? I am here, David. How are you? Well, I would just start by pointing to what Barack Obama himself said about those questions when he was running for the office that he now occupies in December of 2007. He said, quote, "The president does not have the power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to the nation." So by Obama's own words, the president does not have the power that he's now exercising under the Constitution. And as far as why it matters, on August 1st, 2007, when he laid out his reasons why he was running for office and why he thought it was so important to change the way we were doing things, he said, quote, "No more ignoring the law when it's inconvenient. That is not who we are. We will again set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers." So to allow presidents to simply start wars on their own without any
You asked why I picked you. I didn't. You did. The surveillance you've experienced means you've been selected, a term which will mean more to you as you learn about how the modern SIGINT system works. For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, article you write, site you visit, subject line you type, and packet you route is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not. Your victimization by the NSA system means that you are well aware of the threat that unrestricted, secret police pose for democracies. This is a story few but you can tell.
Thank you for inviting me here to give me the opportunity to express my story. But let me give you some of my background. I spent about 4 years in the military, and then I went into NSA directly. So I ended up with about 37 years of service combined. Most of it was a lot of fun, I tell you. It was really a lot of fun breaking these puzzles, solving problems and things like that. And that's really what I did. I fundamentally started working out with data, looking at data and data systems and how you do that. I was developing this concept of analysis that you could lay it out in such a way that it could be coded and executed electronically, meaning you could automate analysis, okay? And it has to do with metadata and using metadata relationships. So that was my whole theme there at NSA. Eventually that's what I ended up to. I was the only one there doing that, by the way. So at any rate, 9/11 happened, and it must have been right after, a few days, no more than a week after 9/11, that they had decided to begin actively spying on everyone in this country. And they wanted that back part of our program to run all the spying. All right? So that's exactly what they did. And then he started taking the telecom data, and it expanded after that. So, I mean, the one I knew was AT&T, and that one provided 320 million records every day. That program was reauthorized every 45 days by what I called the Yes Committee, which was Hayden and Tennant and the DOJ. The program was called Stellar Wind. So first I went to the House Intelligence Committee and the staff member that I personally knew there, and she then went to the chairman of that committee, Nancy Pelosi, who was the minority rep. They were all briefed into the program at the time, by the way, and all the other programs that were going on, including all these CIA programs. I wasn't alone in this. There were 4 others out of NSA, and we were all trying to work internally in the government over these years, trying to get them to come around to being constitutionally acceptable and take it into the courts and have the courts oversight of it too. So we naively kept thinking that could happen, and it never did. But at any rate, after that and all the stuff we were doing, they decided to raid us to keep us quiet, threaten us, So we were raided simultaneously, 4 of us. In my case, they came in with guns drawn. I don't know why they did that, but they did. So.
Laura, I will answer what I remember of your questions as best I can. Forgive the lack of structure. I am not a writer, and I have to draft this in a great hurry. What you know as Stellar Wind has grown. SSO, the expanded special source operations that took over Stellar Wind's share of the pie, has spread all over the world, to practically include comprehensive coverage of the United States. Disturbingly, the amount of U.S. communication ingested by NSA is still increasing. Publicly, we complain that things are going dark, but in fact, our accesses are improving. The truth is that the NSA has never in its history collected more than it does now. I know the location of most domestic interception points, and that the largest telecommunication companies in the U.S. are betraying the trust of their customers, which I can prove. We are building the greatest weapon for oppression in the history of man, yet its directors exempt themselves from accountability. NSA Director Keith Alexander lied to Congress, which I can prove. Billions of U.S. communications are being intercepted. In gathering evidence of wrongdoing, I focused on the wronging of the American people. But believe me when I say that the surveillance we live under is the highest privilege compared to how we treat the rest of the world. This I can also prove. On cyber operations, the government's public position is that we still lack a policy framework. This too is a lie. There is a detailed policy framework, a kind of martial law for cyber operations created by the White House. It's called Presidential Policy Directive 20 and was finalized at the end of last year. This I can also prove. I appreciate your concern for my safety, but I already know how this will end for me, and I accept the risk. If I have luck and you are careful, you will have everything you need. I ask only that you ensure this information makes it home to the American public.
Does the NSA routinely intercept American citizens' emails?
No.
Does the NSA intercept Americans' cell phone conversations?
No.
Google searches?
No.
Text messages?
No.
Amazon.com orders?
No.
Bank records?
No.
What judicial consent is required for NSA to intercept communications and information involving American citizens?
Within the United States, that would be the FBI lead. If it was a foreign actor in the United States, the FBI would still have to lead and could work that with NSA or other intelligence agencies as authorized. But to conduct that kind of collection in the United States, it would have to go through a court order, and the court would have to authorize it. We are not authorized to do it, nor do we do it.
All rise. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning and welcome to the Ninth Circuit. The first case for argument is Jewell versus National Security Agency. You may proceed.
May it please the court, Kevin Bankston for Carolyn Jewell and her fellow plaintiff appellants in Jewell v. NSA. Your honors, plaintiffs have specifically alleged that their own communications and communications records have been acquired by the government. But the district court found that we had failed to allege facts that differentiated the injury that our plaintiffs suffered from the injury suffered by every other AT&T user whose communications and records have been acquired by the government, basically concluding that so long as everyone is being surveilled, no one has standing to sue. However, to deny standing to persons who are injured simply because many others are also injured would mean that the most injurious and widespread government actions could be questioned by nobody.
Do you have anything concrete that, in fact, a specific communication of your client was intercepted?
We have evidence that all of the communications passing between AT&T's network and other networks in their Northern California facility have been intercepted, and so that would necessarily include the internet communications of our Northern California plaintiffs. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May it please the court, I'm Thomas Byron from the Department of Justice, here on behalf of the government defendants. We think this litigation need not be resolved in federal court in light of the oversight of the political branches, both legislative and executive, which provides a better opportunity for oversight and resolution of the concerns raised concerning nationwide policies of alleged surveillance in these complaints.
Even if it's revealed that one or more of the plaintiffs had email or telephone conversations intercepted that had nothing to do with national security?
Your Honor, I don't know that anyone necessarily would have standing to raise the particular claims at issue in these two cases. We think instead that the kinds of claims at issue here against these defendants are those that are better suited to resolution before the representative branches of our government.
So what rule would the judiciary have if your approach is adopted?
Judge Pregerson, I think that the...
I mean, we just get out of the way? Is that it?
Well, Judge Pregerson, I think that there is a narrow category, a subset of cases in which it may be appropriate to step aside for that narrow category of cases.
But the judiciary plays a role.
To be sure, Judge Pregerson.
In our system.
Yes, Your Honor. And we don't mean to diminish that.
You're asking us to abdicate that role.
No, Your Honor, but it is a question of this court's discretion whether to reach that issue. We do think that there is simply no way for the litigation to proceed without risk of divulging those very questions of privileged information that would cause, as the Director of National Intelligence has explained, exceptionally grave damage to national security if disclosed.
Thanks for having me. If anybody has any questions, like I said, just basically just raise your hand, and I'll try to call on you as soon as I possibly can. So, who here actually feels like they are under surveillance pretty regularly?
Anyone Occupy is, no?
Everyone inside of Occupy. How many people here have been arrested and had at their court date, they had their phone taken into the back room? How many people here had their retina scanned? Wow. So you guys are actually, in a sense, the canaries in the coal mine, right? Because the incentives are all lined up against you. Anybody see on the subway, link your MetroCard to your debit card, right? And like auto refill? This is a concept which is key to everything we'll talk about today, and it's called linkability. Take one piece of data and link it to another piece of data. So for example, if you have your MetroCard and you have your debit card, you have those things and you can draw a line between them, right? So that's like not a scary thing. Except your bank card is tied to everything else that you do during the day. So now they know where you're going when you make purchases. So when they decide to target you, they can actually recreate your exact steps with a MetroCard and with the credit card alone. Like literally where you go and what you buy. And potentially by linking that data with other people on similar travel plans, they can figure out who you talked to and who you met with. When you then take cell phone data, which logs your location, and you link up purchasing data, MetroCard data, and your debit card, you start to get what you could call metadata in aggregate over a person's life. And metadata in aggregate is content. It tells a story about you, which is made up of facts, but is not necessarily true. So for example, just because you were on the corner and all those data points point to it, it doesn't mean you committed the crime. So it's important to note that if someone has a perception of you having done a thing, it will now follow you for the rest of your life. So just keep in mind that what happens to you guys, for example, with fingerprints and retinal scans and photographs, that is what is going to happen to people in the future when they resist policy changes and when they try to protest in a totally constitutionally protected way.
This for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. So does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
The encrypted archive should be available to you within 7 days. The key will follow when everything else is done. The material I provide and investigative effort required will be too much for any one person. I recommend, at a very minimum, you involve Glenn Greenwald. I believe you know him. The plain text of the payload will include my true name details for the record, though it will be your decision as to whether or how to declare my involvement. My personal desire is that you paint the target directly on my back. No one, not even my most trusted confidant, is aware of my intentions, and it would not be fair for them to fall under suspicion for my actions. You may be the only one who can prevent that, and that is by immediately nailing me to the cross, rather than trying to protect me as a source. On timing regarding meeting up in Hong Kong. The first rendezvous attempt will be at 10 a.m. local time on Monday. We will meet in the hallway outside of a restaurant in the Mira Hotel. I will be working on a Rubik's Cube so you can identify me. Approach me and ask if I know the hours of the restaurant. I'll respond by stating that I'm not sure and suggest you try the lounge instead. I'll offer to show you where it is, and at that point, we're good. You simply need to follow naturally.
As far as positioning, I mean, if you want us to sit in any particular way, or whatever.
You know, I'm gonna go there. If
Okay.
I get better light. Just want to know where the first place is.
So there's so many different enormous stories just that are kind of standalone stories that even certain things about individual document that can just be their own story. And I just want to start churning those stories out. I basically woke up this morning and already started writing stories. So I'm hoping to, start publishing within like a day or 2 days.
Okay.
As long as you're good with that.
Yeah.
And so as far as the stuff we have to talk about, I mean, I'm kind of like dichotomizing it between, stuff that I'd like to talk to you about in terms of like the documents and the content. And Laura has a bunch of questions about that as well. Sort of while we're working through the documents, getting your take on a lot of this stuff that, will help me understand it better. But then also the sort of you story, right? Like the who you are, why, what you've done, why you've done what you've done.
Yeah.
And I'd love to do that first.
Okay.
In part because you're the only one who could do that. So I'd like to just get it done so that it's done. And also because, it might be that you want to do that early because it might be necessary or we might choose to have that done early. Tell me your thoughts on just where you are with that.
The primary one on that, I think I've expressed it a couple times online, is I feel the modern media has a big focus on personalities.
Totally.
And I'm a little concerned the more we focus on that, the more they're going to use that as a distraction. And I don't necessarily want that to happen, which is why I've consistently said, I'm not the story here. Nervous.
No, it's a very, very cheap pen. That's just the slightest force, bro. Go ahead.
Anything I can do to help you guys get this out, I will do. I don't have any experience with media, with how this works. So I'm kind of learning as I go.
Right. So I just want to get a sense of why did you decide to do what you've done?
So for me, it all comes down to state power against the people's ability to meaningfully oppose that power. And I'm sitting there every day getting paid to design methods to amplify that state power. And I'm realizing that if, the policy switches that are the only thing that restrain these states were changed, you couldn't meaningfully oppose these. I mean, you would have to be the most incredibly sophisticated technical actor in existence. I mean, I'm not sure there's anybody, no matter how gifted you are, who could oppose all of the offices and all the bright people, even all the mediocre people out there with all of their tools and all their capabilities. And as I saw the promise of the Obama administration be betrayed and walked away from, and in fact actually advance the things that had been promised to be sort of curtailed and reined in and dialed back, and actually get worse, particularly drone strikes, which I also learned at NSA we could watch drone videos from our desktops. As I saw that really hardened me to action.
In real time?
In real time, yeah. It'll stream a lower quality of the video to your desktop. Typically, you'd be watching surveillance drones as opposed to actually murder drones where they're going out there to bomb somebody. But you'll have a drone that's just following somebody's house for hours and hours, and you won't know who it is because you don't have the context for that. But it's just a page where it's lists and lists of drone feeds in all these different countries under all these different code names, and you can just click on which one you want to see.
Right. But so if your self-interest is to live in a world in which there's maximum privacy, doing something that could put you into prison in which your privacy is completely destroyed is sort of the antithesis of that. How did you reach the point where that was a worthwhile calculation for you?
I remember what the internet was like before it was being watched, and there's never been anything in the history of man that's like it. I mean, you could, again, have children from one part of the world having an equal discussion where, they were sort of granted and the same respect for their ideas in conversation with experts in a field from another part of the world on any topic, anywhere, anytime, all the time. And it was free and unrestrained. And we've seen the chilling of that and the cooling of that and the changing of that model towards something in which people self-police their own views. And they literally make jokes about ending up on the list if they donate to a political cause or if they say something in a discussion. And it's become an expectation that we're being watched. Many people I've talked to have mentioned that they're careful about what they type into search engines because they know that it's being recorded. And that limits the boundaries of their intellectual exploration. And I am more willing to risk imprisonment or any other negative outcome personally than I am willing to risk the curtailment of my intellectual freedom and that of those around me whom I care for equally as I do for myself. And again, that's not to say that I'm self-sacrificing, because it gives me, I feel good in my human experience to know that I can contribute to the good of others.
Could you elaborate on that?
So, I don't know how much of the programs and the actual technical capacities everybody's talked to you about, but there's an infrastructure in place in the United States and worldwide that NSA has built in cooperation with other governments as well that intercepts basically every digital communication, every radio communication, every analog communication that it has sensors in place to detect. And with these capabilities, basically the vast majority of human and computer-to-computer communications, device-based communications, which sort of inform the relationships between humans, are automatically ingested without targeting. And that allows individuals to retroactively search your communications based on self-certifications. So, for example, if I wanted to see the content of your email or, your wife's phone calls or anything like that, all I have to do is use what's called a selector, any kind of thing in the communications chain that might uniquely or almost uniquely identify you as an individual. And I'm talking about things like email addresses, IP addresses, phone numbers, credit cards, even passwords that are unique to you that aren't used by anyone else. I can input those into the system, and it will not only go back through the database and go, have I seen this anywhere in the past? It will basically put an additional level of scrutiny on it moving into the future that says, if this is detected now or at any time in the future, I want this to go to me immediately and alert me in real time that you're communicating with someone, things like that.
So I don't know who you are or anything about you.
Okay. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton, defense contractor. I'm sort of on loan to NSA. I don't talk to a Booz Allen boss. I don't get tasking from Booz Allen. It's all from NSA.
So I don't know your name.
Oh, sorry. My name is Edward Snowden. I go by Ed. Edward Joseph Snowden's the full name.
S-N?
O-W-D-E-N.
And where are you from?
I was born in North Carolina, a small town, Elizabeth City. There's a Coast Guard station there. I'm from a military family. Yeah. But I spent most of my time growing up around Fort Meade in Maryland.
And your family, what's the consequences for them?
This is actually what has made this hardest. My family doesn't know what's happening. They're unaware. I don't think I'll be able to keep the family ties that I've had for my life because of the risk of associating them with this. And I'll leave, what to publish on this and what not to publish to you guys. I trust you to be responsible on this. But basically, the closer I stay to my family, the more likely they are to be leaned on.
So you don't want me to report this?
I mean, we don't. Yeah, we definitely want to do whatever we can not to include them or bring them into the mix.
So, that's fine. I won't.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you. Can we just stop for a second, do the document, and then go back to that? That makes sense. What do I need? Do I need an email address that we're using, or?
Well, so you can send them, once you've encrypted it, you can send it from whatever you think is appropriate. The main thing is you've got to encapsulate all of this in a way that it can't be decrypted and read when it's in transit across the network, or on either of the endpoints.
Okay. I mean, just so you know, these documents are basically all going to be public within 48 hours, 72 hours.
This is simply, you want to get in the process of doing this for everything because it seems hard, but it's not hard.
Okay.
This is super easy.
So just walk me through it. And
okay. Show me the actual folder structure where these files are first. How many documents did you say there were?
7.
All right. Well, while you're working.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
How many documents are we talking about? Because when The Guardian did WikiLeaks, technical people set up a system so that they were available for anybody to see. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if it's possible to do the same thing.
That would be the ideal end game, but because some of these documents are legitimately classified in ways that could cause harm to people and methods, I'm comfortable in my technical ability to protect them. I mean, you could literally shoot me or torture me, and I could not disclose the password if I wanted to. I have the sophistication to do that. There are some journalists that I think could do that, but there are a number of them that couldn't. But the question becomes, can an organization actually control that information in that manner without risking basically an uncontrolled disclosure? But I do agree with that. Honestly, I don't want to be the person making the decisions on what should be public and what shouldn't, which is why rather than publishing these on my own or putting them out openly, I'm running them through journalists so that my bias, and my things, because clearly I have some strongly held views, are removed from that equation, and the public interest is being represented in the most responsible manner.
Yeah.
Actually, given your sort of geographic familiarity with the UK and whatnot, I'd like to point out that GCHQ has probably the most invasive network intercept program anywhere in the world. It's called Tempora, Tempora, and it's the world's first full take, they call it, and that means content in addition to metadata on everything.
So this is what I'd like to do, just in terms of scheduling, if it's good with everybody else. Do you feel like you're done with what you...
Okay.
So I'm anxious to go back, get those articles done, and then there's a bunch of documents that aren't about those first 2 or 3 stories that I'd like to spend time with you, kind of going over. And
I'm not going anywhere.
You're available? You want to check your book first?
Yeah, let me check my schedule.
Is that good for you, or do you want to... Okay.
Hello? Yes? My meal was great. Thank you very much. No, I still have some left, and I think I'm going to be eating it later, so you can just leave me alone for now. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye. Let's fix that real quick. So another fun thing I was telling Laura about this, all of these new VoIP phones, they have little computers in them, and you can hot mic these over the network all the time, even when the receiver's down. So as long as it's plugged in, it can be listening on you, and I hadn't even considered that earlier. But yeah, there are so many ways. This could be, everything that's in here is pretty much going to be on the public record at some point. We should operate on that.
I think we are.
So do you have your air gap machine?
I do.
You can pop that out. Do you have an understanding or commitment on when you guys are going to press with the first stories?
It's about 7 or 8 in the morning in London.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Oh, hey, look, there's the other one. Pro tip, let's not leave the same SD cards in our laptops forever in the future. Did you know that this was still kicking around in your laptop?
Yeah, I mean, that was the...
okay, just making sure.
Okay, yeah.
This is right there. You will have a new one that looks exactly identical that's a different archive, so you might want to take a Sharpie to it or something. Could you pass me my magic mantle of power? Sorry.
I'm going to go for both.
Is that about the possibility of
visual?
overhead?
Yeah, visual collection.
I don't think at this point there's anything in this regard that will shock us. We've become pretty. In fact, Ewan said before, he's like, I'm never leaving my room. He's like, I'm never leaving anything in my room again, not a single machine. I was like, you've been infected by the paranoia bug, and that was all of us. And the way he said it, he was like, I would never leave a single device in the room again alone.
My bag is getting heavier and heavier.
Exactly.
Less and less.
That's your evil influence side.
All right, I'm going to need you to enter your root password because I don't know what it is. If you want to use this one, you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
Looks like your root password's about 4 characters long anyway.
It's usually a lot longer, but that's just like the one-time only thing, right?
So it is...
it had been a lot longer, but ever since I knew that it was just like a one-time only session one, I've been making it shorter. Is that not good?
It's actually not. I was expressing this with Laura either. The issue is because of the fact that it's got a hardware MAC address and things like that, if people are able to identify your machine and they're able to...
This is the fact you're about to break the most upsetting story.
Right, that's true.
So they might kind of prioritize...
It's 10 letters. I type very quickly. It actually is 10 letters.
Okay, so 10 letters would be good if they had to brute force the entire key space.
Right.
That would still probably only take a couple of days for NSA. That's a fire alarm.
Okay. Hopefully it just sounds like a 3-second test. Do you want to call the desk and ask? I think it's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue, but it's interesting that they're just...
Did that happen before?
Maybe they got mad that they couldn't listen into us via the phone anymore.
Is the fire alarm gone off before?
No, that's the first time that's happened. Yeah, see, just in case they've got like an alert that goes through. But that's unusual.
You probably
might have to evacuate.
Shouldn't ignore that. I don't know.
It's not continuous.
It's not continuous. No, I'm just saying if it continues.
And then we go and we meet the guys down in the lobby.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave it for now. Let me finish this up. All right. Not that they're going to answer because they probably got like 7,000 calls.
Yeah.
Hi, we hear a loud buzzing on the 10th floor. Can you tell us what that is? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Bye. Fire alarm testing maintenance.
That's good. Yeah. That's what we wanted to hear.
Nice of them to Nice of them to let us know about that in advance. I just wanted to give you kind of a quick tour. When Laura was looking at this, she was kind of salivating and couldn't stop, like, actually reading the documents.
Right. So we'll try and restrain ourselves without promising that we'll succeed.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain a brief overview of what these are and how they're organized. The beginning are just some documents of interest. The primary purpose of the second archive is to bring the focus over to SSO. As opposed to PRISM. And this is in general. It's SSO, or Special Source Operations. Those are the worldwide passive collection on networks. They're both domestic to the U.S. and international. There's a lot of different ways they do it, but corporate partnerships are one of the primary things they do domestically. They also do this with multinationals that might be headquartered in the U.S. who they can kind of coerce or just pay into giving them access. And they also do it bilaterally with the assistance of certain governments. And that's basically on the premise that they go, all right, well, we'll help you set the system up if you give us all the data from it. There's a lot more in here than any one person or probably one team could do.
Right.
X-Keyscore deep dive. X-Keyscore in general, and there's a huge folder of documentation on X-Keyscore and how it works, is the front-end system that analysts use for querying that sort of ocean of raw SIGINT that I was telling you about. All of that stuff where you can sort of do the retroactive searches and live searches and get flagging and whatnot. X-Keyscore is the front end for that. I'm just going to show you one slide here because Laura thought it was valuable and was talking about kind of how these capabilities ramp up in sophistication over time. This is kind of nice. As of fiscal year 2011, they could monitor 1 billion telephone or internet sessions simultaneously per one of these devices. And they could collect at a rate of about 125 gigabytes a second, which is a terabit.
That's just each one of these devices?
That's for each one of these, yeah.
How many tumult missions would that be then?
Per this, back then, there were 20 sites. There's 10 at DoD installations. But these are all outdated. We've expanded pretty rapidly. But still 20 sites, that's at least 20 billion.
This all needs to get out. You know what I mean? It's like, just in terms of understanding the capabilities, like it's so opaque.
It's not science fiction. This stuff is happening right now.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah. It's like the magnitude of it, and like this is a pretty inaccessible technical document, but even this like is really chilling. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, I mean we should be having debates about whether we want government to do. I mean, this is massive and extraordinary. It's amazing. Yeah. Even though you know it, even though you know that to see it, like the physical blueprints of it and sort of the technical expressions of it really hits home in like a super visceral way that is so needed.
This is CNN Breaking News.
An explosive new report is reigniting the concerns that your privacy is being violated to protect America's security. It reveals a court order giving the National Security Agency blanket access to millions of Verizon customers' records on a daily basis.
Earlier, I had the chance to conduct the first TV interview with the reporter who broke this story wide open, Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian. Congratulations on the scoop. Explain for our viewers why this is important.
It's important because people have understood that the law that this was done under, which is the Patriot Act, enacted in the wake of 9/11, was a law that allowed the government very broad powers to get records about people with a lower level of suspicion than probable cause, the traditional standard. So it's always been assumed that under the Patriot Act, if the government had even any suspicion that you were involved in a crime or terrorism, they could get a lot of information about you. What this court order does that makes it so striking is that it's not directed at any individuals who they believe or have suspicion of committing crimes or part of a terrorist organization. It's collecting the phone records of every single customer of Verizon Business and finding out every single call that they've made internationally and locally. So it's indiscriminate and it's sweeping. It's a government program designed to collect information about all Americans, not just people where they believe there's reason to think they've done anything wrong.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, hearing that the person that you love, that you've spent the decade with, may not be coming back.
What did they ask her?
When was the last time she saw me? Where am I? What am I doing? You know, what does she know about my illness? Things like that. So yeah, they're pretty solidly aware. Because I'm clearly not at home ill.
Hello?
Hello? Hello. Let me disconnect from the internet.
So, there's some news?
Yes, there was indeed some news. IFconfig today, I think, maybe just a few hours ago.
What kind of people is it?
An HR lady, I'm assuming from NSA, as opposed to Booz Allen, because she's accompanied by a police officer, which means NSA police, and they're planning to break into my house, which regular police don't do.
Does she live there?
Yeah, she lives there, so I told her to cooperate fully.
I can't find my phone. Just 1 second.
Don't worry about herself.
You know what I'm going to do? I'll just take out the stuff I want to use.
Okay.
Okay, well, look, I mean, this is not a surprising development.
Nah, yeah, I know, I plan for it, but it's just, when it's impacting them and they're talking to you, it's a little bit different.
Absolutely. But it's possible that they just noticed that you're missing. I guess it's not really a possibility.
It is, but yeah, let me just get rid of this. So I obviously was focused on other things than appearance this morning.
How did she react? Was she relatively calm about it?
She's relatively calm.
Does she know anything about what you're doing?
She has no idea, and that's. I feel badly about that, but that's the only way I could think of where she can't be in trouble.
Did you just basically do I have to go somewhere for reasons that I can't tell you about kind of thing?
I just disappeared when she was on vacation, and I left a note saying, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for a while for work," which isn't unusual for me in my business. Right. So.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of things just quickly. Are they going to be able to go into your stuff and figure out what you took?
In some sort of peripheral senses, but not necessarily.
With great specificity.
Yes, because I cast such a wide net. If they do that, the only thing they're going to do is they're going to have a heart attack because they're going to go, he had access to everything.
Yeah.
And they're not going to know what specifically has been done. Now, I think they're going to start to actually feel a little better, although they're not going to be wild about this in any case, when they see that the stories are kind of cleaving to a trend. It's not like here's the list of everybody who works everywhere.
Right. I also think, they're going to be paranoid in the extreme and assuming all kinds of worst case scenarios, which is going to, I think make them react in ways that probably aren't going to be particularly rational on their part. But at the same time, I do think they're limited for the moment.
I agree. And I had kind of time to set a stage where we all enjoy at least a minimum level of protection. No matter who we are who's involved in this. You're either a journalist
right,
or you're either out of jurisdiction. So we have some time to play this before they can really get nasty. I think it's over, the weeks when they have times to get lawyers really sort of go, this is a special situation. How can we interpret this to our advantage? We see them do this all the time, whether it's drones or wiretapping or whatever. They'll go, well, according to this law from the 1840s, we can apply X, Y, or Z authority. Mm-hmm. But that takes time, and that takes agreement.
Yeah, and also, I think the more public we are out there, too, as journalists, and the more protection that's going to give as well. Have you started to give thought to when you're ready to come forward?
I'm ready whenever... Honestly, I think there's sort of an agreement that it's not going to bias the reporting process. That's my primary concern at this point. I don't want to get myself into the issue before it's going to happen anyway, and where it takes away from the stories that are getting out.
talking about tens of millions of Americans who weren't suspected of doing anything, who were surveilled in this way.
Your thoughts for a moment. I want to continue this conversation because these are really important, sensitive issues, and the public out there has a right to know what's going on. Stand by.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Now, another explosive article has just appeared, this time in the Washington Post. It's breaking news that it reveals another broad and secret U.S. government surveillance program. The Washington Post and The Guardian in London reporting that the NSA and the FBI are tapping directly into the central servers of 9 leading internet companies, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, and Apple. The Post says they're extracting audio, video, photographs, emails, documents, and connection logs that enable analysts to track a person's movements and contacts over time. Let's discuss this latest revelation. They're coming out fast. Bill Binney, the former official of the NSA who quit back in 2001, you were angry over what was going on. You'd be known as a whistleblower right now. Bill, what do you think about this Washington Post story?
Well, I assume it's just a continuation of what they've been doing all along.
So you're not surprised. Do you have any idea who's leaking this information?
I don't know who leaked this. I have no doubt that the administration will launch an investigation, not into who approved these programs, but into who leaked the information.
I'm not shocked that the companies are denying it. I don't assume that...
Do you believe it?
There may be some technical basis on which they can say that we are not actively collaborating, or they don't have what we consider in our own definition to be direct access to our servers. But what I do know is that I've talked to more than one person who has sat at a desk at a web portal and typed out commands and reached into those servers from a distance. So whatever they want to call that, that's what's happening.
What I would call it is the single biggest infringement on American civil liberties probably of all time, isn't it?
It's interesting, Artie, you have the New York Times now today saying that the administration has lost all credibility.
Yeah, the New York Times slammed President Obama for this, and frankly, I was used to that. The New York Times used to slam George Bush for protecting the country and for the steps he took. And I don't want us to drop our guard. I don't want us to be struck again. As we saw in Boston, Anderson, people are willing to sacrifice their civil liberties. People sheltered inside, which was...
How can you believe in freedom, do you think? I mean, try and play devil's advocate for me. When you have secret courts, secret operations like prison, secret investigations which go into every spit and cough of every American's lives without any member of the American public knowing about it. That's not freedom, is it?
In 2008, they eliminated the warrant requirement for
this young man, Ed Snowden, to me, he should be the hero of the world. He should be the #1 hero. Why haven't you seen this on Fox or CNN? Why aren't they doing stories about what a hero? Our government is supposed to serve us, not spy on us. And you heard the general in Congress say, no, we don't collect data on anybody. We're not doing that. And it was all lies, pure lies. You know, Hastings didn't kill himself or smash into a tree south of Melrose on Highland in Los Angeles. I was there. I examined the site. That engine didn't just fly out of that thing and land half a block down the street on the other side. People that are trying to save America are being murdered. It's going to take all of us to demand a clean slate. Lois Capps goes out. Every Republican and Democrat, we throw them all out. Nancy Pelosi, she should be in prison. That's my view. While we still have part of the First Amendment left, I'm William Wagner. Keep watching. We're not done yet. See you next week.
I just heard from Lindsay, and she's still alive, which is good, and free. My rent checks apparently are no longer getting through to my landlord, so they said if we don't pay them in 5 days, we'll be evicted, which is strange because I've got a system set up that automatically pays them. So there's that, and apparently there's construction trucks all over the street of my house. So it's, I wonder what they're looking for. It is an unusual feeling that's kind of hard to like describe or convey in words, but not knowing what's going to happen the next day, the next hour, the next week. It's scary, but at the same time it's liberating. You know, the planning comes a lot easier because you don't have that many variables to take into play. You can only act and then act again.